I am not a bystander. We are not volunteers, but we have worked intimately in other people's worlds. At the same time, I am on my own journey. Stepping over patients' doors with Anthea, the caregiver I shadowed in South Africa, seemed almost invasive. But designed to synthesize learners and growers, every aspect of this program is designed to push me and make me think and develop my understanding of myself and my values. For me, it was hard to maintain a balance between absorbing parts of other people's worlds while growing myself. It was hard to not to become self-absorbed, sucked into my own world of my own preconceptions, and my own values. There were days when I slipped into my own bubble of comfort, and to the best I could, I shut out everything that was different from my own way of life. I slipped into a bubble of isolation. This was the bubble of discomfort that Patrick warned us about in orientation, in the form of circles. Here, just to move outside of the circle of comfort into the circle of discomfort and learning. It was around that time that in the trip that I realized learning in TBB would be different. It wouldn't be the type of learning I was accustomed to. This kind of learning was towards the goals of becoming an agent of change, to becoming an ally to development. Coming into this trip, I had no understanding of what made a change maker, let alone if I felt impassioned to become one. Even now, it is hard to say agent of change really is, and it's even harder to say concisely. People create change in all different ways in different places with different societal rules and different ways of life. So there are many forms of change, and there is no answer to this question, but this is my idea of what makes a change maker a change maker. A change maker is someone whose work in life moves towards development. They're totally invested in their work and live their values, and they are learners, which I would say are people who have the mentality of finding problems and questions in the world and doing something about them. We learned a lot on this trip, and a few moments stand out to me. Moments that will be with me for the rest of my life. Walking into a government-built home in South Africa, I remember the smell of the air. It was musty with a lingering stink of urine. It was heavy and dark, with death looming in the corners. Looking down on this mother of three, Betta, frail under thin covers in the bed before me. This was an incredibly powerful moment and an intimate moment. I felt invasive, curious, mournful, privileged. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know what to think. I was supposed to be learning, but at the same time, it was overwhelming. Overwhelming was the time in India when I felt helpless. The time when the majority of our group and my friends violated walking down the streets because of their bodies. The time when I felt love and empathy for my friends, but was hopeless to fight this system in the otherworldly country in which women's bodies are not their own, where men looked and groped and barked at my friends. And I felt helpless to protect them, but I shouldn't have to. That's the point. They shouldn't need protecting because they are strong, but what was I to do? What could I even say? I didn't know how I felt. I didn't know how they felt, and my words of comfort came from a place of safety. These are my experiences, and they are what my mind will wander back to for years and years to come. Along with many others, these two stories left me with the distinct feeling in the pit of my stomach of wrongness, injustice, dehumanization. That is part of the program, though, right? Seeing that heart-wrenching and dehumanizing and actually learning from it. It is one thing to hear and read about these stories such as these. It's one thing to hear me smell, but it's another entirely to be next to Betta in her bed or with my friends in India. But how have I changed? My parents, family, friends all ask me, like, what have you learned? What I've learned is that the big outlandish questions that we ask on this program have no single answer. I've learned that nobody has a monopoly on truth, and that nobody makes development happen. And how do we even create change, or whose responsibility is it to enact change, or even what development means? Simply because I grew up in a society and a family where medical care and education were nearly as negotiable as breathing doesn't give me answers. Who am I to stay the hand of the teacher in India who hit a child for laughing too loud? And even if I were to say that there are universal ethics and you, sir, are wrong, who am I with the time and money to travel to your country, to work in your school and wrong? That is not how I want to enact change. I want to create change with my thoughts. But thoughts are hard too. In our world of advertising and images and words, where ideas are literally lining our walls and streets, how do I even know my thoughts are genuine? How do I know that they're original? Now that is disheartening. Well, when my thoughts are based on my experience is based on my race, my country, and my socioeconomic status, how valid is my voice in the sea of development and change anyway? But then again, I want to travel and experience and build relationships for the rest of my life. I want to visit and observe and learn, grow in the understanding of our planet. I want to be an agent of change, and how can I not? How can I walk away from better the children at Greenview School and how important forget? I cannot forget the world is constantly developing and people are living right in the middle of it. So I will try. So this is what the TBB experience has been for me. A collection of experiences and seminars, ideas and ideals, which has led me to conclude that I will not be a bystander. Like I wrote in my application months ago, we were thrown into the seas of the world and development. The TBB was our little life vest. This trip has pushed me and stretched me and broken me down and built me back up. And although we have our introspective Who Am I seminars, where we talk about us and you and all of us together, my trip and growth happened to me as an individual. On this trip, I've leaned to the left more than a little. More towards the conserve and preserve than the product and profit. And my heart and mind have led me to conclude that the life I want to pursue be based on experience and spontaneity. A life of travel and adventure, put it simply. This line of thought has also led me to realize that I am uncomfortable with the idea of being patriotic and that of pride in general. These are dangerous lines of thought, for it's easy to categorize and presume and think that yourself as better than anyone else. It is easy to put yourself above others. I even slipped into it with a teacher in India. How could I think that he was intrinsically better than him? Out of all of that, I hope this trip to be, I wanted to change most of all. My biggest fear was to be the same, to live in these countries and absorb nothing. At the end of a trip of a lifetime, I didn't realize it only lasts a lifetime in my head. Besides the memories, what is it I'm walking away with? Well, like Ellie said not too long ago under the stars in South Africa, we're going to be friends for life. That's something. The wonders of the world are grand to see, and the Himalayas jet through the clouds with breathtaking natural magnificence, and these are what I take photos of and produce as simple answers to the question, how was your trip? But what have I myself gained? Maturity is a big word I associate with doing my own taxes, and pride is a dangerous word to describe how I've grown. I'm confident. Now we're getting somewhere. What better word to describe my new sense of motivation, my desire to share my thoughts and my ideas, and the notion that they will be heard and as valid and original. That maybe my out there thoughts and creative works can create change. Might I have learned after all the walks, hikes, and introspective talks of TBB to be confident with my ideas. That although they may not be original per se, and they may come from a place of privilege and wealth, they deserve to be heard, and my works be given thought. After all, I believe being a change maker is a mentality. that no matter what you are good at and no matter what impassions you or gets you going, you can create change by living your values. This is the shift inside me that is growing and shaping. The culmination of my activities and discussions these past 3 months is confidence. This is all well and good, but what do I do with it? How do I move forward with this new sense of confidence in my work, and towards what end? Well, I can work towards the end of poverty. That's something. I can work towards the Millennium Goals and towards equality and justice and peace. These are very large ideas. Towards getting better healthcare and children in India and education. But I am a small drop in this gargantuan tidal wave of change and development that is sweeping our globalizing world, and I am only just becoming an adult. I have no higher education today, no works or business or anything to show other than what I'm showing today. What I have are my passions, my dreams, my values. What I have is my life and how I choose to live it. So I will not be a bystander. I will not be a bystander to systems that oppress and disadvantage. I will not be a bystander to sickness and lack of medical care, and I will not be a bystander when my friends need me. So I've had this reel of some favorite photos playing behind me. On this trip, I took a lot of photos. 6,045 to be exact. And taking pictures is something I really love to do. It is how I express myself, how I share my ideas and share stories. And only recently I've felt the confidence to share them on a larger scale. Sorting anything, editing through these photos, I realized that some of them are kind of decent. So I've gone and printed out a selection of them, and I want everyone to see them tonight at the gala. And part of living my values is, no matter what I'm doing or what I'm passionate about, I create change. So I've decided to hold a small silent auction for these 9 printed photographs. They'll be on display tonight, and all the profits will be going to PledAid, the hospice organization that we work with in South Africa.
So we have about 10 minutes for Q&A, if anyone has any questions for Noah.
Don't make it too hard, yes.
What are your future plans?
Future plans. Something I'm really passionate about also is languages. So I'm thinking of studying Spanish and French in college. I'm also going to continue Chinese, I think, which I studied in high school for a little bit. I'm going to explore my options with photography and hopefully continue to travel if I have the opportunity. Oh, I'm going to Colorado College. So hopefully go on lots of hikes and skiing trips.
Is that the block plan?
Yes, it is, yeah. So the block plan is you have a new class every 3.5 weeks, and then you have a short break in between each class. So you have the same amount of classes per year, but you're just focused on that one course. Yes.
I just want to thank you so much for all the photos. Ellie was not so great at.
You're welcome. Thank you for that.
On the photography theme, was this something you were interested in before you went on this trip? And while you were on the trip, and certainly looking at some of the photos, it seems like there's a lot of emotions on some of the group shots of the participants, but of what you saw. Like there's like an emotional component of the photos. Is that what you were feeling, particularly when you look back at them?
That is, yeah.
Yeah.
As part of telling the story, this is a very powerful and emotional trip, and hopefully some of that comes off in the photos. maybe not the silly one, but
That one, that's a great one right there. I mean, to me,
That's
that
one.
just really captures,
the
you know,
emotion
a
and
moment in time that is an everyday moment, but captures it so well.
yeah, photography is something I was interested in beforehand. I'd taken a couple of courses. I had never really done any projects or anything to share my work. Yeah, it's been both therapeutic and productive this year, I'd say.
You have a very good eye.
Out of all of these moments, like what was the most, like, not significant, but like what moment did you decide that you like wanted to do something? Like obviously in South Africa you had the moment to caregiver, which those are always emotional moments. When did you decide like you didn't want to be bystander and like you wanted to continue on after this trip? Because it can be difficult. So just like what, I don't know. Was there a point everyone's kind of like, whoa, what's happening? Or was it in South Africa when you were with the host families, or in Thailand when you were hanging out with
I'll say South Africa and India really stick out to me because in our work, it was very personal. You know, we were working with students and with people who are sick and caregivers, very caring people and people who are going through a lot in their own lives. So this really stuck out to me, and I think that's where the shift kind of started. You know, I've been reading about development and change for so long. It's very popular to talk about nowadays, but it's totally different to go there. And it's hard to get inspired by a newspaper article, but going there, I think was a big difference.
What township did you live in?
Pensive.
Something that I've struggled with is finding a way to bring my intentions into action, because I thought is a lot easier than action. So is there, other than don't be a bystander, is there something that you're going to think to when you're presented with a situation that you are thinking about your values, but maybe it's hard to enact them?
Yeah, that's a hard, that's a hard notion. Again, these are all ideals and they're all ideas and they're what I'm taking away from this trip, but I don't know how I'm going to enact it exactly. I think that the thing that I'm going to try for is to work it into my everyday life little by little, and no matter what career I go into, try and work that in there. But see, I don't really know. Yes,
What
Mom.
part do you think? I just wonder about like the friendships and the group aspect, like what part that played in the whole, you know, whether that was to developing some of these ideas and thoughts, like what you take away in terms of the people.
Yeah. I think a lot of the shifts were internal in nature, but definitely the group conversations, even, you know, both the formal seminars and informal, just having dinner or whatever, really started the ideas in my thinking and towards, you know, seeing, oh, that's something that Ellie mentioned she saw the other day. So it's a combination of having the group and also having the group to go back to. You know, you go through all these experiences like seeing Betta sick in her bed or teaching in India, being frustrated and confused and angry. But you always have a group of friends and mentors to go back to. I think if you make an effort, you can find people to practice reflective, people to reflect.
I heard myself question whether your ideas were original or whether other people think your ideas are original. Why does originality in your ideas and beliefs matter to you?
Well, to a certain extent, as long as, you know, we're moving towards the end of poverty and towards protecting the environment and issues that are, you know, important to me, it doesn't matter to an extent whether my ideas are original as long as they connect change and get the job done. I don't know. I think it's empowering to think that your ideas are original. It motivates you. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's a whole lot, but I think for me, it's the idea. You know, if my idea is original, if my photos are original, then I want to continue doing it.
With it now being, did you get out of it what you kind of went into thinking you would, or was it completely different at the end than what you kind of went in thinking you were going to be at the end? You know, like it's a broad question, but like, did you go in thinking I'm going to hopefully change this about myself to become this? Yeah.
Yeah.
How was the trip, Noah?
Well, honestly, I kind of went into it with the idea of a study abroad kind of thing. So it has, you know, it's totally sidestepped my expectations the best way possible. And I think I got out of it a lot more than I hoped for in the beginning. I did not see the change.
So this is probably me just projecting, but it seems that you have a lot of things around communication. These photographs, especially, you're really powerful photographs. And what's amazing about photography and imagery is you've discovered is how it's able to communicate in ways not necessarily verbal. But I was just wondering what maybe is your inspiration to study some languages that has to do with global photography and communication. Again, I'm projecting, so.
Yeah, no, I do enjoy communication. Languages in particular are really interesting because it plays into the whole, like, you have a conversation in a different language. It's a whole different dynamic if you're speaking a person's native language or if they're trying to speak yours. And it totally shifts the conversations. It gets you in and it makes them feel more comfortable. And also it makes you think about how you express yourself, and even in English, totally differently. In terms of my photos, I don't know. I'm kind of selfish with my photos. I do them for me. I really like doing that. But I think hopefully it expresses myself. Yeah. Hope I answered the question.
Thanks.
We've noticed that you, over the last few years, have been quite selfish with your photos. Keep asking for certain copies. As grandparents, we don't really do a lot.
Well, a lot of them led me to get some of these really good shots. Yeah, so a lot of them are not worthy of sharing. But I don't know. I think I'm gonna start an Instagram and start posting some of them, and having to spread those out.
If with the student names,
Yeah.
That'd be
could
good.
pull. I don't know
Yeah.
if you use Lightroom or Aperture, so you could tag them and then you could pull out. So we could get high content of ones that have Julia in them or something that
I
are
could
good.
do that.
That would be wonderful. You know, like the 3 stars with the names. That'd be wonderful.
I'm using Lightroom to do that, so
Yeah.
it should be organized at base.
Thanks, Noah. Noah.